Hello everyone, my name is Eric Jones, better known as the Turf Teacher. Welcome to Chapter 1. It's entitled Introduction to Pest Management in Turfgrass and Ornamentals. It comes directly from your Ornamental and Turfgrass Pest Management, Chapter 1. So again, we are still talking about integrated pest management. And this is going to be your last lecture really talking about that, but in each textbook as we go forward, guys, is really going to be talking about all the principles and practices that's involved in an IPM. You may not hear me say the word integrated pest management plan, but that's what we really want you guys to do as a horticulture student and as a horticulture professional, that you need to start implementing integrated pest management principles and practices. And now you've had a lot of information in these past lectures, and I know we're jumping into the O&T book, jumping from our core manual and then jumping into this. Now remember, when you sit for the exam, the state licensing exam, that's going to be two different tests. Now this course, I'm jumping back and forth, especially in Unit 1. And then when we continue on with Unit 2, we will finish up the core manual, and then 3 and 4 is about your finishing up the O&T book. So this Unit 1, we are kind of jumping back and forth because I really wanted to get you introduced to the IPM practices, and then talking about the pesticide calculations, and then applying the correct amount. So that's why we're jumping back and forth in this. So let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 1 in your O&T book. Now, we're talking about the basic principles of IPM. Again, this should be a refresher for you on the past lectures that you've already seen. You need happy, healthy plants. Now, some of my favorite landscape architects that we have done installations for actually have their plant material certified. They go and certify the nurseries that we have to buy the plants from. They've certified us as installers. They've certified the nurseries and the sod farms, saying that that's the only place that you can buy the plant material for our jobs, for our clients that's going on our designs. Guys, I appreciate that 100%. I love working for those landscape architects because they have already committed to being involved in the project. They're telling us where we have to buy our product. We don't go out and bid it. I mean, it's pretty much, hey, it's, if we're bidding against somebody else, we're buying the same plants for the same price, the same quality. So it's everybody's on a equal playing field. I love that. And that is the first way to implement an integrated pest management plan, because we're getting healthy plants. We're not getting a plant from a nursery that hasn't taken care of it, that hasn't given it the correct amount of fertilizer, who hasn't kept it in the shade when it needs to be. So, I mean, things of that nature, guys, all plays into the life of the design and the life of the plant that is used in the design. So again, produce and select those healthy plants. Identify the problem. If you're already on the job site and you're seeing a plant decline or a group of plants decline, make sure that it's not an environmental condition. Is it too wet? Is it too drought? Is it been too cold? I mean, are they freezing? Make sure it's not an environmental condition. And then different action strategies are gonna take place. I mean, look at your textbook, for example, and I'm actually reading along in our textbook. Yellow nutsage and purple nutsage may need different action strategies, guys. And hey, what's the best cultural environment to get rid of the nutsage? Is to get down there and pull it, basically. I mean, yes, you can spray it with, what were we using the last time? Basagram, stuff like that. I mean, highly expensive chemicals to put out this. Sometimes just jump down there and pull it up and make sure you get those seed pods out. But again, there's always going to be some left. But a good cultural practice is to pull it. There's different action strategies for every pest that is used out there, guys. And you need to know what pest it is so that you can implement these different strategies. In the landscape, guys, you're going to need to expect some pests, and you need to tolerate some damage. Now, that might be different for each client that you have. We have clients that have a zero tolerance for pests. And we have some that, hey, I don't care if the Bermuda grass takes over my fescue. I don't care if I have a yard full of clover. All we want, it's mowed. We don't really care about that. We're not the big, landscape aesthetic neighbors in our neighborhood. So I mean, and that's a-okay. But for the clients that do have that zero tolerance, you're going to have to explain to them that they need to expect some of these pests, and that it's just a part of nature. Economic threshold, we've talked about that in the previous lectures. Again, that's going to be different for field crops, landscapes, and then nurseries and sod farmers. Field crops and then nurserymen, that's, you know, their threshold might be a little bit lower. They want to step in and implement the use of a pesticide or the use of a biological control pretty quicker than somebody just talking about their azaleas in their front yard, because this hurts their pocketbook and their wallets. This is their living, so they may have to implement. And if you look at the little diagram over there, and we've seen one very similar to it, you have the economic injury level. That means it's too late for control. The damage is done, it's non-repairable, you're going to lose the crop. That economic threshold, that's when the control is needed. And each person, each farmer, each sod farmer, each agricultural person is going to have to determine what their threshold is. That is when you're going to step in to prevent the damage. And then you've got that equilibrium there with control is not needed, and it's in balance with all the natural enemies that's out there. So when you walk out to your crop, when you walk out to your turf grass, when you walk out to your field of trees, you're going to see some pest. It's okay. Expect that. Expect some damage. Just keep an eye on it and make sure that you know what your economic threshold is. And again, you're going to have clients in the landscape business that has a zero tolerance for it, and we've got to educate them on it. Use pesticides, guys, only when needed. And if you do have to use it, guys, do the spot treatment. That's going to slow the pesticide resistance. You go in there and you make a broad application, it's going to give a chance for the insects to develop that resistance. So get out there and spot spray. You know, here we see the spray bottle with a little bit of pesticide in it, and that's a-okay. They actually sell these pesticides at your at the local dealers, guys, that you can buy aerosol cans or little spray bottles like this to keep in your truck. And if you see something like that, get out and hit it. The last thing I want to do is take the hose off the truck with a big spray tank to go and spray 1 or 2 weeds like this. Get your backpack out or get a spray bottle that's already pre-mixed and take care of these things. And that's spot treatment. And then be sure, especially when you're looking at plant material, you know, and it can play into turf grass too, but if you're looking at your ornamentals, guys, make sure that it's a pest that's caused the damage. Again, not that it's an environmental issue or a cultural issue. Make sure that it is the pest. Identify that pest and make sure that it is what's causing the damage. And this goes all back to, what is the problem? What are the symptoms? You guys get a head cold or you get the flu, you start developing symptoms. Same thing with our plant material. Hey, what are those symptoms? But make sure it's not in the poor location. You know, is the azaleas planted too deep? Are the azaleas planted in full sun? Guys, you've got to know your plant material and you've got to know the cultural characteristics of these plants. Now, this book that we're talking about right now, O&T, later on in the chapters, we're going to talk good information about cultural practices for both turf grass and ornamentals. Is there too much or too little fertilizer? Guys, you need to know that. Is it freezing or drought again? Know what the pest is. Again, misidentification of the pest has always been the biggest problem for pest control applicators. We need to know what insect, what disease, what fungus is causing these issues to be able to properly identify them and then implement the correct pesticide or a biological or cultural method that could replace the pesticide. So, you know, guys, you're a hero in my eyes. You're going to be a hero in your client's eyes when you can actually take care of the pest without using a pesticide. And that, my friends, is when you can start charging big bucks for that. People want that kind of information and they want to look to you as the expert for their pest control. Hey, they got rid of my pests and they didn't have to use any pesticides. People brag about that. It's the whole environmentally sound kind of like in home building, you know, the green building. People jumped all over it. People are all about saving the environment and not using a pesticide, and we should be too. So what is the problem? Use a Hans lens. Get a magnifying glass, keep it in your truck, keep it in your toolbox there. And the previous, you saw in the previous lectures, have that little toolkit that helps you identify these, pest materials. Have the note cards, index cards, so you can see if the mites are falling off, on that white card. And have indicator plants. The rose plant here is a good indicator for Japanese beetles. So that's one of their favorites. So if you have a rose bush on the property and you go over there and you see large amounts of Japanese beetle and you suspected Japanese beetle damage on another plant, well, you've got that good indicator there, because they're going to be all over the rose bush first and foremost. So check that indicator plant, go back, check on it weekly, see what the damage is, see if it's getting worse, see if it's getting better, if you've implemented an IPM practice, and keep good records of it. I cannot stress, keep good records. And your cell phone, guys, is the way to keep records. I mean, guys, I love the Snapchat app for that reason. You can take a picture and then type in it and send it to yourself. So what perfect way to document what's going on. And it also give you the temperature. The app will give you the temperature. And then you can put the time in there. So you've got the temperature, time, and notes on a picture, and you can send it to yourself and then send it to your customer as well. Action controls. Guys, we've got some control options. We've got cultural, we've got biological, we've got mechanical, and we've got chemical. And chemical should be the last resort that we use. We need to make sure that there's, a mechanical way not to get rid of it. Can we use, if it's a rodent or something, can we use a cage to trap it? Is it biological? Can we bring in lady beetles, ladybugs? Can we use those? In cultural practices, is the plant planted too deep? Is it not planted deep enough? What's going on with it? Make sure that pesticides is the last resort in your integrated pest management plan. And guys, one of the things that we do as pesticide applicators is that we put out chemicals on a predetermined schedule. We should not be doing that. We should, however, like with our pre-emergence, yes, because crabgrass is going to happen. We're going to go out and we're going to put out a pre-em fertilizer. But do we need that second application? Or do we need to put out that pre-emergent fungicide if we haven't had any previous data from previous years stating that we have fungus issues or problems? So we've got to keep up with those good records. And before applying any product, guys, review the cultural requirements for the plant. And the best thing about it, that information is in this textbook in later chapters. Know that, know the plant, know the cultural requirements for it, and study the plants and know it. Guys, the worst thing that could happen to you is you're out talking to a client and they know that is, let's say, an Ilex compacta, and you don't. Know your plant material, study your plant materials, become a certified plant professional, know the plants. That is the biggest problem in this industry is, guys, I know landscape architects that don't know plant material. I know designers that don't know their plant material. And I know guys that's been in the industry 20 plus years that still don't know their plant material. Study your plant material. And guys, trust me, I teach plant materials 1 and 2. I will lose that knowledge if I don't use it. If I wasn't teaching it every semester, yes, I'm going to forget certain plants. It's just human nature. You're not going to remember it. So study it and know it and stay up to date on it. Biological controls are used in the southeast for insects and mites. Bacteria, fungi, insects, mites, and nematodes are all available for biological control of different plant materials. So guys, we have different action choices that we can use and implement during our IPM programs. Application and mixing. Guys, particle drift, vapor drift, 2 big things. I got guys call me all the time, hey, Eric, is it too hot to spray? And I'm like, well, it's 95 degrees, you shouldn't be spraying anyway, but we've got 15-mile-an-hour winds. You don't spray pesticides probably past 11 o'clock in the morning, to be honest with you. You want the cool, still mornings of our climate here. So today, overcast, it's not too hot, so we ain't got to worry about temperature. As long as we don't have any wind movement, we're okay to go out and spray. Now, you know, this guy's spraying this fine mist, and look at it, it's taken off across the whole field. Well, let's just say that this was a turfgrass application instead of an agricultural field, and you're out using a backpack like this, and let's say you've got Roundup in it, to be honest with you, and you're out spraying shrub beds, and you've got hollies and azaleas and dogwoods that are, you know, very susceptible to Roundup damage, and that drift is getting over into your dogwoods. Man, it's going to zap them. Done for. Guys, be careful. That's why I like that when I use a tank sprayer or even a backpack sprayer, I like more of the liquid to come out versus the vapor. But your particle drift, and the book states that particle drift is the movement of fine particles, droplets, or dust through the air while the pesticide is being applied. And your vapor drift is the movement of the particle in the form of a gas or vapor during or after the application. So you could even make an application, gets on the plant, it's still got some wet in it, it's turned into a gas, the gas rises and then gets carried over in vapor drift. Guys, you have to be extremely careful, especially with people that are having beehives, vegetable gardens, any of that stuff that you can find in the neighborhoods. You've got to be extremely, extremely careful. And guys, always have a buffer zone. You know, don't spray the entire area. Leave a buffer zone that's protecting you from what doesn't need the chemical to what does need the pesticide application. And always stay clear of HVAC equipment or any type of ventilation equipment, because you don't want that vapor to be sucked in to a ventilation system. People and pets, not pests, remove furniture, lawn furniture off the patio if you're spraying around the patio. Remove water bowls and dog bowls, food bowls for pets that are outside during the day. Make sure that the pets aren't there. They need to be inside while you're making the application, and at least you need to check the re-entry period before you let the pets back outside, or at least let it dry if none of that information is available on the label. But check that re-entry period. Some may say 4 hours after pesticide application, or others will say when the pesticide is dry. Always clear off your sidewalks and driveways. Nothing ticks me off more than when I see or get a call back from a customer and one of our lawn care crews does not get the backpack blower off the truck and blow the sidewalk or driveway off, and you see the yellow fertilizer, white fertilizer on that black asphalt. It's just shining there. Guys, clean up. Because the bad thing about that, you need that chemical. It needs to be in the yard. So sweep it up, blow it off, get a shovel, scoop it off or whatever, put it back in the bag, or blow it into a shrub bed, especially if it's a pre-emergent, but never leave it on the sidewalk. Your pre-emergence is going to have pendimethalin and other yellow staining chemicals in it, and that chemical is going to get washed down into our sewer drains. So be careful with that. Clean your mess up. It drives me crazy. And then schedule your applications when people aren't around. And when you're going to do an application, call the customer the day before. Hey, we're doing an application tomorrow. We're going to be putting out fertilizer. We're going to be spraying from broadleaf weeds. If we see it, we're not going to mix the two in the tank, and I'll tell you more on the next slide. But let your customers know. Pre-warn them that you're coming out. Resistance. Repeatedly for the same pest, repeatedly using the same pesticide for the same pest causes it to lose its effectiveness. Don't do it. You've got to change it up. You've got to change up different classifications of chemicals for the same pest. Slowing the resistance. You can do this by using the pesticide only when needed first, and then using the alternate pesticides. Never use the same thing, especially in the same season over and over again. And guys, even goosegrass, one of the nastiest weeds that we see a lot of, chinch bugs, boxwood leaf miner, and downy mildew for roses have all become resistant to certain pesticides. And we don't want that, guys. We need to change it up. Tank mixes, plant damage or phytotoxicity, guys, happens when you mix all these chemicals together. Don't do it. It is legal, and you need to read the label. And if it says do not do it on the label, of course don't do it, because label is the law. But the double dosage of some of these, especially of emulsifiable concentrates, can damage the plants. And it can also cancel the effectiveness, even if you're mixing fertilizer with pesticides. But let's take a look at that. You've got a big truck tank, and you've got one large tank on it, instead of having separate tanks, you're mixing your pre-emergent pesticide for crabgrass with your liquid fertilized. I could see maybe doing it for that if you're putting in your pre-em with a liquid application, because you're going to do that once, possibly twice for a client. But never mix your broadleaf herbicide with the liquid fertilizer, because you may or may not have any broadleaf herbicide or broadleaf weeds in the yard. And if you go and you're double dosing it up, one, it's costing you money. Second, you're not being a steward of the land. Thirdly, I mean, you're breaking the law. You're putting a pesticide out when it doesn't need to be out. That's against the law. Label's the law. You only apply a pesticide when it's needed. So figure out broadcasting broadleaf weed control with the liquid fertilizer. It's costing you more money. The chemical is. You're pulling that hose around. I don't like it. I'd much rather put out a dry application, fertilize, and then get a backpack sprayer or pull the tank off if there's a lot of broadleaf weeds in the lawn. But best thing to do is grab that backpack if it's a small. You're doing spot treatments. And if you've got somebody on a fertility program, they shouldn't have that many weeds to begin with, because if you'd put out the pre-emergent when it was supposed to, it would have caught some of that broadleaf weeds. But never mix the tanks other than if it's probably a pre-em with a liquid fertilizer application, early on in the season. Formulation effects. Emulsifiable concentrates are more likely to burn the plants than wettable powders or even flowables. Wettable powders and flowables will leave a residue on the plant that's not going to be liked by most clients. Liquid formulations are better for above ground pests. And then liquids or granulars also work on below ground pests. But granulars are better for sites that cannot be irrigated right after the application. They can actually sit there and wait for the rain and stuff to come. Pesticide breakdown, bacteria, fungi, break down the pesticides into non-toxic substances, and then the bacteria and fungi can be abundant to degrade pesticides rapidly. This fast breakdown occurs when the same pesticide is used several times in the same season. And guys, I know why that happens. You guys are buying your chemicals up front. You're wanting to save money, getting that discount, ordering it for the year, but you cannot do that when it comes to pests, guys. So don't use it over and over again, especially during the same season. And guys, that concludes chapter 1. Hopefully these lectures are short and to the point, and it keeps you focused and interested. And I'll see you in the next lecture. Thanks.